Hey everyone, and welcome to QuantumAcacias. This is Dee Dee, and I am so glad that we found each other. Make sure if you're new to the channel, as most people are right now, come on in, do a little subscribing, like the video, share the video with a friend, especially if something that I mentioned is something that has been coming up for you guys. I was about to say, hey twins. I was just reading up on Jesus's twin Thomas, and how actually one of the other one of the other spellings of Thomas, I think they said is from a Syrian root or Syriac. Oh yeah, a form of Aramaic, is basically a Tauma. So like the Tao, and then Ma, like mother of the Tao, which I'm pretty sure the Tao is the cross. It's also the letter T. So I thought that was very interesting. And so I've got twins on my mind. But today we're going to be talking about the dream that I had last night. I haven't posted, my astral adventures in the astrals. That's what I'm calling these kind of dream astral travel during the night or vision experiences. I'm calling them adventures in the astrals. I have so many saved on my phone that I have just not put up yet. So you might hear me say that quite a few times. But I just did one yesterday on, child, I've already forgot what I was doing it on to. And I already forgot. Okay, they must want me to stay on task because I can go all over the place. Okay. All right, let me focus on today. Okay, so anyways, past lives have been coming up a lot, and I got a glimpse into one last night that I thought would be really, really interesting to talk about. Now, I'm a person that in general is into past lives. I did start doing QHHT, and I'm planning to pick it back up in 2025, but I'm also working on my own hypnotic induction technique with some elements of QHHT. Especially since some of the elements of QHHT are hard to get around just if you're doing hypnosis just in general. But I'll definitely say with some hints of QHHT in them. So I'm getting back into that. So in general, past lives is not out of the norm for me. But I have noticed that it has been coming up a lot more. Even my son this week had a dream about a past life. Maybe that's what I was talking about, being eaten by the giants, child. And then last night, also a part of this dream series, I had a dream about him being connected to the Egyptian god Min. And I remember telling him in the dream, I was like, yeah, that's not a piece that you can embody right now at 7. But I'll go and grab it for you, and I'll hold on to it until you're 18. Now, I want to say, if you have not studied into the Egyptian god man, then yeah, there's a reason I did that. And that's something that I didn't necessarily think about, especially when I put out the astral travel lucid dreaming thing. Maybe I didn't think about it directly, but in the moment I was like, oh, I don't think you should go and grab that piece right now. Let me hold on to it for you. And then I do want to say this too, because I feel like it's important to say that a lot of time people are, kind of just getting on the spiritual path or going into past lives and ends up connecting to deities and things like that. A lot of the time, from the things that I have experienced, and that could be personal to bloodline or something like that, but I don't think so necessarily. Because with past lives, I have seen that you can reincarnate into any type of family. It doesn't have to be the same consistent one, though, of course, people who have certain spiritual beliefs tend to reincarnate people who at least are within that belief or directly in their family, a part of closed practices and things like that. I have noticed that. But most of these deities and things like that, I personally believe a lot of them were deified ancestors. And so when you're saying that you are the incarnation or you are, a part, you are this, being and things like that. I definitely feel like most of the time it is saying that you are a part of that bloodline. Now, you may be a person within the bloodline that is more, what's the word, like in alignment with that being's energy. And so you can embody a lot more of those closer qualities. Now, also with that being said, I also do feel like there are some people who literally could be an incarnation of these beings. I do feel like they can incarnate into multiple vessels as well. But I always just think, just in general, it's always on the safer side to say that you're like a part of the family. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just safer that way, because there's a lot of things that come with saying that you are the embodiment of something. And I think that like the probably first basic thing of being the embodiment of something is that you would have to exhibit consistent supernatural, quote unquote, supernatural, superhuman ability. That's number one. Now, I also think that could take time, so it might not be, at first. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I'm just hearing like in my wait, it's really funny because I don't usually think about things in this sense, but like the song that I'm hearing is like, you'll bring honor to us, you'll bring honor to us all. But I'm also hearing like if you stand up and say that you are this being and you are not able to consistently produce a certain like level of supernatural, whatever, it could be a dishonor to that entity. So anyways, let's get into this dream that I had last night, okay? So this was very interesting because when the dream started off, I was walking with my husband. I was walking in this place that looked like downtown New Orleans. And I remember saying out loud, like, are we in New Orleans? And he was like, this is downtown Phoenix, Didi. And I was like, I don't know. But then eventually I realized that I was walking on the same road, and this was similar to the dream with the cul-de-sacs and then walking between realities. I don't think I put that out yet, but I will. So hopefully when you like hear this later on down the line, like you'll be able to go back to that one and hear the reference for it. But I started to realize that I was walking in two different places at the same time, in two different time periods, and it was wild.com. And it was interesting because it was almost like a perfect overlay, which I thought that was so interesting. But when I think about the Matrix, and I think about the Matrix, being built on math, so like the crossroads matrix, which is a kind of constructed matrix, right? Because there's very few, from what I've heard from scientific studies, there's very few actual straight lines in reality. And so these are kind of calculated points based on certain things. So I think that matrix, the crossroads matrix, is pretty much like a matrix of like magic and intention. And over just hundreds of thousands or billions or whatever of years of conscious intentions and stuff, it has developed into a system of its own. And that's the math system. That's my personal belief. And then the more natural matrix or, grid system would be here on Earth would be the trees, the root system. So anyways, let me focus, y'all, because I'm going everywhere. Okay. So anyways, we were walking on this street and I realized that we were in a portion of downtown Phoenix somewhere and it was nighttime and there was this overlay of France. And I was like, oh, I feel like I remember this. And so anyways, Ray and I were walking up to this building, and even though it was a building in Phoenix, it was also a building in New Orleans, but I knew that the building that it was in France was not on a street somewhere. So that's where the French timeline kind of deviated. However, they were able to get the room in the same spot, if that makes sense. So the castle of the room, the castle wasn't on the same part of the street, but the room was in that spot. So I'm assuming that this room was in a castle that was on the ground level of somewhere, and they were able to get the room in the same place. So anyways, we walk inside this room, and the first thing that was impossible to miss was that it was completely covered in crushed red velvet, like crimson crushed red velvet, completely. Like when I tell you, like the walls, the floors, the ceiling, it was literally a red room. And I was like, yeah, I remember this. And I remember saying to myself, like, we really didn't know about insulation. And I was like, if it gets like wet in here at all for whatever reason, it's gonna mildew so badly. Like I remember thinking, like, why in the world did we ever put fabric on the floors? Like, why did we do that? And it was crushed velvet, so it wasn't super smooth velvet. So, you know, there was space for air pockets and water to sit and things like that. But anyways, I was like, okay. Now, the interesting thing is that I'm not sure if Ray was also able to see this room either, because he didn't make like an expression like, whoa. So I don't know if we were next to each other, but we were in different realities, which I have seen that before too. So I don't know if he was in New Orleans. No, because he said he was in Phoenix. I know it's kind of trippy. So I'm assuming that he was in downtown Phoenix. So he was not seeing this velvet room, okay? Which is funny because there was this old restaurant in New Orleans called the Velvet Room. And I think it was a part of like a red light district or something like that. Crazy, but I knew that he couldn't have seen it because he did say like, this is Phoenix. And I was like, well, it's Phoenix, it's New Orleans, it's also France. But of course, New Orleans has French connections, so that's not too surprising. But and then I've also heard that some of the wood, some of the bricks of New Orleans were actually flown in from France to use to build some of the buildings in New Orleans. I have heard that too. So anyways, I get into this room and there's little, I don't think that these embellishments were within the velvet. That's the other thing. Like it almost felt, I don't know exactly, but it almost felt like we were at the beginning of this kind of red room thing. Because it wasn't super embellished or anything with gold, like within the velvet itself. But I feel like there was gold, like, I don't know if it was like tassels that were sewn onto the walls or golden, like, borders or something that was sewn onto the walls. But I feel like it wasn't within the velvet itself. And like I said, it felt like this was kind of a new thing because, you know, when you're at the beginning of something, it's pretty simple at first. And then as people get, you know, a hold of it and things like that, they start to embellish it. Because I also have had a dream about a maroon and gold room, similar to this, but not the same. And this one was Persian or Moroccan. I can't remember. But this one, like, it was totally Baroque style. So it was a mix of crimson and gold. But this one in this place, it was definitely it seemed like it was a newer thing that they had started doing. And so it hadn't gotten super embellished yet on the walls and things like that. That's my take on it. I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly the story, but that's what I felt like. So I also knew that this was in Marseille. I think that's how you pronounce it, Marseille. I know there's also Versailles, but I think it was Marseille. I don't know, child. That place. The M1. I believe it was the M1, okay? And so anyways, I knew that this place was like something for the royal kids to go and like have fun. So we would go to this room and we would have fun and we would dress up with masks and things like that. And then we would drink. So there was like this So there's like this overlay, because then the overlay started to become more seamless. Okay. So at first it was kind of like blinking between my eyes. I could see the difference in the streets and like the locations of it. And then eventually they started to kind of merge together. So then at first it was a completely red room. And then I went to think about like, oh, when I come to this room, it was almost like a subconscious trigger. Like whenever I saw this room, it was like party time. Do you know what I mean? It's party time. And so I'm like, oh yeah, where's the red wine? But then I'm with Ray, and I think he was coming with me to go to this place downtown Phoenix or whatever, because he was dropping me off. And he was still going to use like the car with the kids to go do something else. So he was just like dropping me off, and he was going to come back and get me. But I also felt like in this palace or castle kind of situation, I don't know if he was also like a part of the family, or he was someone that was like supposed to be like watching me on castle like grounds or something like that. I don't know. But anyways, I was going into the place, and instead of it being like old style French, whatever they use to keep drinks cool, it was like a refrigerator. And I was like, oh, I'm starting to merge them together. But anyways, when I opened the fridge, there was this very interesting wine bottle, and I picked it up and I read it, and for the life of me, I cannot remember what it was right now. I know that it had like a cream colored kind of thing on it. It looked like they had like kind of a darker picture of like a woods or something on it. I can't remember for the life of me. It's probably Chateau something. But I also knew that this wine bottle, and maybe that's also why the fridge was modern too. Like this was like the modern version of this ancient or, older French wine. And I remember that the bottle was pretty normal, except for the top of it was like flat, child, like it reminds me of some of the salad dressings that we get, like that flat kind of black puck kind of top. I remember the top was like flat. It wasn't like a regular bottle nose. And so I was like, yeah, we're about to party. And then something clicked, and I was like, nah, I'm in this life now. I've got a husband, I've got kids, like I don't really want to go out. And, it seemed like we would drink and then we'd put on these masks, and it seemed like we would go out to scare the common folk. That's what it seemed like. I really think that it was like in good fun, but it was also like this kind of rebellious thing to like not for people not to know who we were. But I mean, it seemed like we were dressed in velvet as well. So I'm sure they probably had some type of idea, but they couldn't necessarily identify, I guess, like specifically who it was. And we just go out and then just like scare people. Like, I don't know, like just being annoying. And so I was like, nah, I'm just not going to do that today. Like I've got a husband, I've got kids, blah, 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 blah. And then the fun thing is that like the whole velvet room went away. And instead, it kind of turned into this place where Ray and I were with the kids, and we were in like this charging station. So it was kind of like a mall, I guess, but it was like an indoor kind of charging station where people could come and plug in their electronics and things like that. And we were in a room, and there were a few other rooms, and then there was like a more open kind of space for people to come and plug in their electronics and stuff. And it turned out that we had a friend who she was out in like the bigger area, and she wanted to charge her child's phone, but I don't know if the plugs were working that well. So she was coming in to see if we had some plugs in there that they could use, and we did. So anyways, it turned into like this charging station thing. And I was like, yeah, this is where I am now, And like I'm doing like the family thing, It was really funny. It was really funny. And then like there's like 50,000 kids, like all of our friends in this place had kids. And so it was like, parents and children, and it was fun. And then somebody threw up, and it was like a whole thing. And then, but it's much easier to do that with like 7 adults, even if there's a lot of kids. If there's like a lot of adults though, it helps out a lot. And then after that, at some point was my son telling me like, oh, he's about to go get his soul piece. And I was like, yeah, not quite that one yet. Not quite that one yet. And there's also something about Mesoamerica too. I definitely have some connections to Guatemala. There's something about Mesoamerica too, where I was like talking to some Mesoamerican beings. They had like the headdresses and everything. And they were talking to me about going into this cave to like retrieve something, which could have been like a soul retrieval type of thing too. I can't remember for the life of me what it was right now, but it was like a piece, and then that piece, like you know, a soul aspect or soul piece or whatever. And then with it, you got an animal. And I felt like it was a type of bird. I felt like it was a type of bird, but I'm not exactly sure because, like, outside of the dream realm, every time I go to sleep, I try to like wind down as I'm laying down before I actually like transition in hopes to catch myself transitioning. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But usually that's like when beings will come and talk, or ancestors or something like that. And for the last 2 nights, I've been having this black boar come. So he hasn't been talking. I was going to say come and talk, but he hasn't been talking. But, you know, the first night it was this black boar, and it looked very strange. Like the eyes were kind of weird. The eyes were strange. The energy was strange, but it was unmistakably like something interdimensional going on. So it wasn't just my imagination. Like I was actually interacting with this boar. And it was almost like this tunneling effect. And he was like at the end of this tunnel, I guess. And, but it was like a black tunnel. So I couldn't really see the makeup of the tunnel, but I could feel it though. And he was staying at that other end. He was looking really crazy or whatever. So I was just like, okay, hey. And then last night, it actually started off with this little black pig. Oh my gosh, he was so cute. And I felt him run down this tunnel to come to me. And we were kind of interacting. I was like petting him and all this stuff. And it was really fun. He was very excited and stuff. But then I saw this black boar and I was like, well, what's wrong with him? So I decided to just walk down the tunnel to go and like just address it. Like, what's good, you know? I'm playing. It's 1:11 right now. So if you're seeing 111, this could be significant. Like, what's good? I'm not going to beat up the pig. I'm not. Like, I promise you. So anyways, I walked up to him and I just like, I don't know why, but I just picked up his feet, like his 2 front legs. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? So it wasn't like a machine or something. I don't know what to describe it as, but it kind of reminds me of the BioBot. I don't know if I put that out though, that video out about BioBots in Arizona. But it looked like it had been taken over by something. And I felt like it was either interdimensional or something like that. So it either was like a cross to, I don't know. I picked it up and I could tell that it was like a real boar, but something wasn't quite correct about it. So maybe it'll come back and I'll be able to explore it. But the black pig though was cool. Like he was real cute. He was having a good time and everything like that. Definitely remind me of Abner from Hey Arnold, definitely. All right, my friends, I wanted to talk about, I forgot. They're like, mention this room. Okay, so I do feel like this room could have some type of Masonic connections. I definitely feel that, especially the last time I saw this red type of room. It definitely had to do with some type of ritual. So I do feel like that. And I know that I had this dream back in 2015, like the week that I was having my first child. And it was about the goddess Bastet, and I didn't know who Bastet was at that time period. I had no clue who it was at the time period. But I remember that as I was getting some type of soul piece or something from that interaction, I was like walking back into the light with my soul piece, and there was like this tunnel effect, right? Like this kind of tunnel I'm talking about with this boar. And there was this tunnel effect going on. And right before I went back into the light with my piece, I looked over to the right and there was a room. And in this room was Beyonce, and she was like swinging that. I think the person is called a thurifer. I don't know if that's what the thing is, but when the priest dips the wand into the water, when the Episcopalian church, It's like a ball and chain kind of situation. She had something like that, and she was like swinging it around her head, and it was like red light in the room. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is the red room. I've got to remember the red room. And I remember that as she was swinging that, she was singing Come Back. Now, this is in 2015 before Lemonade album came out. And of course, that song was a part of 6-Inch Hills, which really took me out when I saw it, because I felt really, really strongly pulled to watch the Lemonade album. And I'm not a person that watches every single thing that Beyonce does. But I felt a really strong pull to watch the Lemonade album from start to finish, like the visual album she put out. And when I saw that part, baby, I almost fell out of my chair. I'm not going to lie to you. That's like a whole nother conversation. But when I saw that and she was saying come back, I knew that it was like come back into the light. And there was something significant about this red room. Now, it's interesting because also the guy from the Migos, I forgot which person right now, he also has a song called The Red Room, and it's Egyptian themed. And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, the red room. Like, it's like I've forgotten what the red room is, but it's really significant. It's really significant. So I felt like this velvet room is also connected to this red room, which I feel like is an upper room. So I don't know if it's like supposed to be a heavenly realm or a celestial realm or a like refresher type of something, like a charge. Maybe it's also like a charging station, because that's what it turned into in modern day. It was like a charging station, like a refresh before lives or something like that, to remember why you've come. I could see that. I can definitely see that. And then there was one last thing to mention, but then I forgot, child. It's so much stuff happening at once. What else? They did say something about red velvet and the Haram Abif thing. Yeah, child, I didn't forgot. And I do know as I was reading into it, I got this notification on Zillow about this house on Latana Street. And when I looked up Latana, the goddess Leto came up, who's supposed to be the mother of Artemis and Apollo. But it's interesting because I was watching something about Artemis and Apollo, and there was a woman who had studied into it. And she said that actually, if you go to like older temples of Artemis, there is no mention of Apollo. So she was like, either she originally did not have a twin Apollo and he came later. She said that you will find Artemis in the temples of Apollo, but there are very few temples of Artemis that have Apollo as well. And so she was like, either they have a really bad sibling relationship or he was not originally her twin. So I thought that was interesting. It was 117. So yeah, that's what I have to say. If you have had experience with the red room or red rooms, like I said, I've seen it, now in France, which I don't think I've seen that connection before. Most of the time I see it, with a connection to Egypt. Actually, both times it was a connection to Egypt, but then there was also Morocco, kind of North African and possibly Persian connection. And then eventually that segued into Egypt. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the North African one was prior to Egypt. That's just how it progressed in the dream, which that's something I'm gonna have to talk about another day, because when I was looking up Thomas, I see that in the Malankara Orthodox Church, they celebrate Thomas. They celebrate his feast day on July 3rd, which is actually the day that I had that dream. It was the second going into the third. His feast day is also December 11th. I mean, not December 11th, December 18th, and then also winter solstice on the 21st. So I think that these are really interesting things, but comment down below. If you have any specific questions, you can definitely send me an email, subscribe to the channel, come back and see me, and all those fun things. All right, my friends. Bye.